All right, let's talk about Nigeria's economy now, where the economy recorded a seventh consecutive quarterly growth in the second quarter of 2022 as real GDP expanded by 3.54% year-on-year, an improvement compared to the 3.11% growth recorded in the previous quarter, although lower than the 5.01% growth printed in the corresponding period of 2021. In terms of aggregate real GDP, it stood at 17.29 trillion naira, representing a quarter-on-quarter decline when compared to 17.35 trillion naira recorded in the first quarter of 2022. Meanwhile, Nigeria's GDP grew in the review quarter despite economic headwinds ravaging the global economy. Well, let's assess the factors responsible for this growth and the lessons for further economic growth. Joining us now is Steve Okafor, MD, CEO, Kofana Security and Investment Limited, joining us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
It's nice being with you guys once again.
Good to have you on the show. Now, the Nigerian economy recorded a seventh consecutive quarterly growth in the second quarter of 2022, as we see the GDP expanding by 3.54% year-on-year, and it is an improvement compared to the 3.1% growth recorded in the first or the previous quarter. How do you react to this growth?
Yeah, it's a positive development. Okay, anytime there's an expansion in the GDP, the growth of the GDP is a good one, because if you look at what is happening globally, other economies are shrinking because of the effect of the Ukraine and Russian war. But for us to be experiencing expansion is a good one. So we take it up from there.
Yes, but what would you suppose is responsible for this growth despite economic headwinds? You just mentioned the fact that in the global economy is experiencing a downturn when it comes to... Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, if you actually look at it, one, our economy is largely dependent on exportation of crude oil. Okay, if considering the bottlenecks, considering the challenges, or the Ukraine and the Russian war, the impact it has created, boosting prices in the crude oil. Okay, one way or the other, definitely to positively impact on our economy. Okay, so basically it's not far-fetched. It's not dependent on the policy of the government per se. It's just what I would say the external influence of what is happening globally that's impacted positively on us. That's it.
But if you look at the fact that this, if we look at the sectoral growth, especially when you look at the agricultural sector and then the road infrastructure, it was said that it was largely responsible, that the road sector was largely responsible for this growth, as we see that road transportation contributed we saw the road transportation contributing about 3.54% of the growth, or rather a 56.38% growth rate, following a 24.63% contraction recorded in the previous quarter. And of course, it is the highest quarterly growth recorded in the sector since the second quarter of 2021. What would you say is responsible for this, looking at the fact that the road sector or the road transportation sector has witnessed a lot of insecurity issues in recent times?
Yeah, if you look at the growth in the road transportation, don't also forget that despite this increase from 24% to 56%, it accounts for just 1.7% of the economy.
Okay. Some transmission, or rather some interruptions there. But it's talking about...
if you look at the absolute... Are you hearing me there?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I said, yes, I agree that road transport contributed majorly to that growth. But look at the absolute impact on the GDP. It's just about 1.7%. Okay, so you cannot probably say that the the growth in the GDP is purely because of, yeah, I know road transport, mining, and all those things contributed to the growth, but their absolute contribution to that GDP is particularly not too impressive. Let's take it from there.
Yes, but we were concerned about the fact that the road transport sector actually had the highest contribution. And we've seen a lot of insecurity issues in recent times, the kidnappings, abductions, and all manner of issues with the road transportation. But despite all of this, it still contributed the highest to the GDP.
Now, look at it this way. Don't forget that air transport is now expensive.
Is what?
Air transport. To fly from Port Harcourt to Lagos, that used to be in the neighborhood, in fact, with the highest amount being 30-something thousand, right now is going for between 70 and 120. Okay? And it costs across the whole of Nigeria. So what do you think that people must do?
Okay, some issues there, but of course we're working on it, and we would get the conversation going, talking about the road transportation. He was trying to make a comparison, to draw a parallel between road transportation and air transportation, saying that right now the cost of air transportation has jacked up, and so perhaps people are now opting for road transportation. But we also know that the roads are really not safe. We've heard of kidnappings, abductions, and many people complaining of all manner of ills while plying the road. And one would wonder what is responsible for this growth in spite of all of that. But he's saying that it's because people are now using roads as alternatives as to air transport. But some people would also tell you that the air transportation has served as alternatives to road transport because of all of these issues that we've been talking about. Steve, over to you now. Can you hear me?
Yes. If you look at the costs of air transport across the country, you discover that one, not just the hiking price, but the unreliability and cancellation arising from those air transport. So people are taking alternative routes, okay, and possibly the only alternative route in Nigeria right now is road transport, because the rail transportation is practically non-existent. Except between Lagos and Ibadan.
Yeah, but some would argue against that point, saying that the aviation sector has also had its own issues, or rather that people are now going for the aviation, or rather for air flights, because of the fact that the roads are not safe. And we see the aviation sector also growing by 22.45% in the second quarter of 2022. That's from 50.68% growth recorded in the previous quarter, and we know that it involves both domestic and international air. And despite the fact that there's a hike in the price of flight tickets and people are now opting for the road transportation, as you said, but now we see a growth. What's responsible for this growth in the aviation sector?
No, repeat. You're a little fast. Once you go to telephone conversation, you need to calm down so that I can hear you.
Oh, apologies. Apologies. So I was trying to draw a parallel between what you said and the statistics we have on the ground. The statistics shows that the aviation sector grew by 22.45% in the second quarter of 2022 from 50% or 50.68% recorded in the previous quarter. But you said now that people are opting for road transportation as against the air transportation because of the fact that there's a hike in flight tickets. So what's responsible for this growth in the aviation sector?
Yeah. Like I said, if you look at one, remember we're just coming out from COVID experience, where a lot of meetings and then people moving from one end to the other were highly restricted. Okay, so right now, movements have improved. Okay, unfortunately, at the same time, you also discover that even when movements have improved, air tickets are high. So air ticket is very exorbitant. So what do people do? They still need to move. You understand? Don't forget that not everybody falls into that upper class that can afford to pay any amount or for people that are going on business trips that can afford to pay any amount by flight. Okay? You need to consider the people at the lower end who need to also move and at the same time find it very easy to go, to wherever they are, to their location, where the roads, you understand? So that's just my take for it.
Okay. Well, let's also look at the fact that the non-oil sector contributed largely to this GDP growth. They talked about the fact that ICT...
Come slowly.
All right. The non-oil sector contributed largely to the growth in the GDP. And they talked about the ICT, the agricultural sector, contributing also to this growth.
No,
what are the lessons?
Non-oil sector, which area? No, just take it. Non-oil, you were saying something, I didn't get that.
Okay. So I was talking about the fact that the non-oil sector, the agricultural sector, the ICT, and all of the sectors that are not involved with the oil sector contributed largely to this growth in GDP. What are the lessons that we can pick from this to further grow the economy?
Seriously, let me just I'm finding it difficult to hear you, but let me just tell you, let's look at those areas. Let me just come into those areas that more like pushed the GDP, that contributed to the high growth in the GDP. Let me just take them on one by one and let you see my own take on them. Take for example, you look at air transport that increased. I'm not looking at the air transport locally. You understand? It is air transport internationally. Look at the number of Nigerians that fly out of the country because of. I don't want to sound political. You understand? Because of possibly what's the not just insecurity, but the level of economic decay we are falling into this country. So when we say air transport contributed, I think it's international air transport, not local. You understand? I'm not saying people don't fly locally, they still fly, but that is international. Okay. You look at mining. Don't forget that the Ukraine-Russian war affected adversely. You understand? The energy supplies to the developed world.
All right, so, Steve, we might have to wrap it up here because of time. Please, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time on the show.
All right.
Have a good day. All right, have a good day.